When I was a kid, Dr. Seuss was one of my favorite authors. I loved just about everything he wrote. And then in the 1990s, Jim Henson of Muppeteer fame created a TV series based on Dr. Seuss's characters called The Wubbulous World of Dr. Seuss. And one of those episodes was called Oh, the People You'll Meet. And it was sort of a takeoff on or sequel to his book entitled Oh, the Places You'll Go. And in episode 4 of It's a Jazz Life, I sort of covered that ground, describing, or better yet, showing some of the places Ben visited as a jazz musician in 1920s and 30s Europe. And while that was interesting, far more interesting are the people he happened to encounter in his travels. And this is where things get really interesting because people who are interested in jazz, or really any kind of music, want to know about the personalities involved. Because first-hand accounts are very hard to come by, and in many cases, we're talking about relatively insignificant figures in the grand scheme of things. We can't cover everybody, but I've tried to unearth what I can. And the really interesting thing I'm finding as I really delve into the research is the interconnectedness of the music industry. It doesn't really surprise me because I'm familiar with more contemporary music and how that works. Collaboration between different artists is a very common thing, like a lot of niche industries where there's a lot of this, oh yeah, I worked with that guy before. So there's a lot of that. I mean, individuals drift in and out of other people's lives, and I'll note that where appropriate. And this is such a big topic, I've decided to break this down into a few different episodes, and unfortunately it may disrupt my schedule release due to all the research I have to put in. But basically I've decided to do this by decades, starting with the 1920s. Now here's where my fan base comes in. As I noted in a couple of my earlier episodes, the photos and other memorabilia that I show are part of a collection of material I inherited from my great-uncle Ben Pickering, and unfortunately he suffered from dementia before ultimately passing away in the early 1980s. As a result, I have no idea who some of these people or groups are. There are, however, a number of people out there who have sharp eyes and an enormous wealth of knowledge that I can't come close to touching. And I'm hoping that in those cases I can borrow from their expertise to identify some of these people or acts. As I'm beginning to discover, you can't find everything on the internet. The best place to start is almost always at the beginning, so we'll start by going back to 1926 and Ben's trip over to Scheveningen, which is a seaside district of The Hague in the Netherlands. Now, interestingly enough, in looking at the resort in Google Earth, it doesn't look as it's changed much in the 96 years since these photos were taken. Same pier, same hotel. In any event, and as I've gone over before, this was Ben's first professional appearance with Frank Guerranti's world-famous Georgians. And much of what I know of this group comes to me courtesy of Jack Grady, who has been so super helpful. Just a shout out to him. He's the one who provided me with a push in the right direction, and I can't thank him enough. I also want to be sure to credit Chet Williamson Sneed, who published an article on the Jazz Riffing and Lost Worcester blog, which can be found on jazzriffing.blogspot.com, which I've included a link in the description above. I should also mention that Jack Grady also provided a good deal of information for that article as well. The guy definitely knows his stuff. So, as of 1926, here's who we have in the world-famous Georgians. The band leader, Frank Guerranti, was born in Italy, and as Williamson Sneed notes in his article, according to Frank Powers, Guerranti was also present in the first wave of American jazz players to invade Europe in the mid-1920s. He is particularly unique through his exceptional skills as a trumpeter, composer, and leader, in addition to his witness of and participation in the development of New Orleans jazz, New York jazz, and the commercial music scene of the 1930s. Now, Guerranti formed the Georgians back in 1921. However, Ben did not join until 1926. And that is through mere happenstance. Ben, who happened to be in attendance at one of their performances, went up to talk with the band after the show. And it seems that a day or two early, their original trombone player had left them in a lurch. And they invited Ben to sit in. Now, apparently Guerranti was impressed enough with his performance to offer him a contract on the spot. Another one of the Georgians was drummer Ted Noyes. Rather than steal from their thunder, I again direct you to Chet Williamson Sneed's excellent article with an assist from Jack Grady, which I have linked to in the details, and covers the career of Noyes. He is one of the real underrated figures in early European jazz, having been there almost from the beginning. Having served in World War I and been decorated by both the U.S. and France for his heroism, he returned as sort of an ambassador for jazz, assisting in a number of acts and popularizing the genre in Europe. He really deserves more acclaim than he has received. Saxophone player Ernie White was another of Ben's chums. I tried to find what I could about Ernie, but could not turn up anything about him individually. If anyone has any details on him or what happened to him after his run with the Georgians, I would love to know about it. Now, Eddie Bave was a talented sax and clarinet player with the Georgians who first appeared on the European jazz scene as early as 1923. In addition to his work with Frank Guerranti, he also played with the Savoy Havana Band, the Savoy Orpheans, who we will discuss shortly, and the Sylvians. It is known that Guerranti left the Georgians in December of 1926 to join the Savoy Orpheans, taking another member of the band with him. Now, based on the fact that we see Eddie Bave with the Orpheans, it is possible and in fact probable that this is the other member of the Georgians that Guerranti took with him. Now, according to Grady, Ted Noyes then took over the leadership of the group and renamed them the Symphonians. Now, here we know Ben was still playing with the Symphonians, as this clipping in the newspaper confirms. On tour in Paris in 1927, Ben departed the Symphonians to join Lud Guskin's Playboys. In fact, on July 31st, 1927, the Playboys recorded 6 sides for Path Records. Now, the Playboys toured extensively, including an engagement at the Excelsior Palace Hotel, Lido, Venice, Italy. Throughout this period, Guskin added a number of French musicians from the Gasson Orchestra to the Playboys. It's not clear what happened next, but Pickering was later replaced by French trombonist Leo Vauchant. Now, Vauchant was an interesting character in his own right, a classically trained multi-instrumentalist. In about 1922, he became interested in jazz, stating that the lure of money, jazz, in America was too great to resist. Throughout the 1920s, he alternated between playing with classical orchestras and jazz legends like Benny Goodman, Gene Krupa, Joe Venuti, and Fred Waring. Eventually, he gained a solid enough reputation that he was offered a position as a cellist and percussionist with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, a very prestigious position for the classically trained Vauchant. Now, it had been his dream to go to the United States, so this seemed to be a gift from heaven, but that dream would be realized in a far different way than he expected. As he was waiting for his U.S. visa to be approved, a process that took 3 years at the time, he played for a time with Fred Waring and the Pennsylvanians. When his visa was finally approved, he moved to the U.S. and played trumpet on Arlene and Norman Selby's American tour. After Fred Waring returned to the States, he re-signed with them, becoming the chief arranger and composer. And around this time, the Boston Symphony Orchestra upped the ante, offering Vauchant the role of principal trombone at a salary of $80 per week. Now, this is a good deal below the $275 a week he was making with Waring, so he turned down that offer. But getting back to Ben, by September of 1928, an article with the Johnson County Democrat confirms that Ben was playing with the North Russian Star Orchestra in Sopot, which is currently the Polish city of Sopot, in the Free State of Danzig, which is now Gdansk in northwestern Poland. Now, this group was led by Gregor Nakoshunin, I hope I got that right, a Russian Armenian and made up of members from Belgium and Holland. In late 1923 and early 1929 is kind of murky. It seems that Ben played primarily with Deus Bella during that time. A program for a Deus Bella show on March 9, 1929 shows that he was on trombone and mellophone for that appearance. Now, I never heard of the mellophone before I saw this reference, so I looked it up, and it appears to be sort of a vertically stretched trumpet. So it seems I'm always learning something as I do research for these episodes. Anyway, it also seems that Ben was doing some sessions with Theo McKebbin, Merrick Weber, Julian Fuse, Teddy Klein and the Virginians, and Ben Berlin, for which he received credit. By 1929, he had hooked up with Carlos Benzi's Ambassadors and embarked on a tour of a number of cities, including Rome. That brings us up to 1930, and here is the part I talked about earlier. I have a number of photos I'd like to share, and for some I have all the details, names, places, and dates. For others, I only have partial information. For others, I have no idea at all. So this is where you guys get to play Trivia Quest. For some of them, I have a good idea of what we're looking at, but for others, I have no clue at all. Not all the musical acts feature Ben Pickering. Some of them were just sent him from friends and acquaintances. Some are autographs, some are not, some have never been seen before, while others are publicity shots. In all cases, I'll provide what identification I do have and invite you experts out there to add whatever information you may have. And the goal of all this is to properly archive and protect this for future generations and historians. I'll be glad to credit you with supplying the information. I really like to applaud people who are generous enough to share their information and knowledge with others. By the way, I would also like to ask anyone, if anyone has suggestions on how to best protect these materials, please feel free to offer your suggestions. I mean, right now they're just in big mailing envelopes, and so I don't really know how to better protect them to keep them from deterioration. The first up is the Capitol Serenaders. Now, I can't find anything about them online, and this was not a group that Ben was part of, but he did note that this was taken in Amsterdam, and there's no year associated, but my best guess would be mid to late 1926 to early 1927. I also found nothing on Charlie Miro's band, but this photo is identified as having been taken on November 25th, 1929. Kind of wondering who the cat by the piano is. He doesn't have an instrument in his hand. So if you can tell me anything about Charlie Miro and his band, I'd love to hear about it. Next, we have Eddie Ditton and his Royal Syncopators. Now, as far as I can find out, Eddie Ditton was actually one of the earliest pioneers of German jazz and a popular dance band in Germany in the 1920s. An interesting tidbit I discovered is that Rainer Lotz, who published a book entitled Eddie Ditton and His Boys, is available on Amazon. And I've had the opportunity to communicate with Herr Lotz by mail in the past, and I really admire him. He is definitely an expert in the field of early European jazz. I can't recommend him highly enough if you're looking for information on Eddie Ditton. Hans Albers? How did he get in here? Actually, Albers was a very famous German actor, if not the most famous in the 1920s and 30s. Stupid American that I am, I've never heard of this guy before. But he starred in the first German talkie, The Night Belongs to Us. At least that's the English translation of the title. I would no doubt murder the German pronunciation. And in he also was in Marlene Dietrich's smash, The Blue Angel. He remained popular in Germany under the Nazis, but tried not to associate himself with the members of the Nazi parties. It was obviously a tightrope for public figures in Germany at that time. You don't want to support an evil regime, but you don't want to end up in their camps either. So I really don't envy the stars who find themselves in that situation. Meet the Holland Symphony Jazz Band and their leader, Max Tack. I'm not sure the year, and I'm not familiar with the name. Again, not much information is available on the web, but I did learn that Tack was a classically trained violinist who played with the Concert Gebouw Orchestra in Amsterdam. See, my pronunciation of some of these terms in different languages is terrible. Now, he did a great deal of work composing music for silent films. He did most of his work at the Jasinski Theater, which is apparently where Ben came into contact with him. I don't have any idea where this picture was taken, but again, likely late 1926, 1927. Now, these are the kinds of photos that I find fascinating. According to the autograph, we are looking at Los Louis Fernand from March 31st, 1927. Wish I could say more, but I don't speak Spanish, so I have no clue what this is about. I recognize music and Ben, but that's about it. She is quite lovely, though. Olé, indeed. Eric Weber we do know quite well. That's Ben on the top row, fourth from left. No year was noted, but based on my chronology, it would have to be mid-1928. For those who don't know, Weber was a legend. He was only 21 years old when he founded his first orchestra, and by the early 1920s, this band was recording prolifically, first for Parlophone, later for Deutsche Grammophon, before finally settling with Electrola. The funny thing is, Weber, another classically trained musician, reportedly detested jazz. But of course, he had no choice but to bow to popular demand. However, according to noted historian M.H. Cater, whenever his band launched into a jazz interlude, he would pointedly depart the conductor's podium and get a drink at the bar. My kind of guy. Despite his dislike for jazz, he had a fantastic ear for talent, hiring such well-respected musicians as Arthur Briggs and Rolf Goldstein, both on trumpet, pianist Martin Roman, and banjo player Mike Danzig. Now, fortunately, he was able to leave Germany before the Nazis took power. This dashing chap is Lou Babula in Berlin, February 25th, 1929. At least I think his first name is Lou. It's hard to tell from the handwriting, but he looks pretty famous, but it's hard to tell. If anyone has any idea, I'd love to know. Gotta admire his fashion sense. And Nick Cassidy is another mystery to me. This autographed photo was taken in Prague on March 15th, 1929. I could find no details on Nick Cassidy, so if anyone is aware of him, please leave a comment below. Richard Talber was a famous Austrian tenor. He sang in a number of operas, mostly in the 1910s and 20s, appearing with both the Vienna State Opera and the Berlin State Opera, as well as in other smaller companies. He toured Europe, gaining wide acclaim. He was also known for his enormous output of recordings. From 1919 to the end of his career in 1947, he recorded over 700 gramophone records. Now, I'm not sure if that's any sort of a record, but it's certainly an impressive output. No, not Teddy Sinclair, the female pop singer. This is the different Teddy Sinclair, and alas, I can't find anything for this person either. The photo is listed as having been taken in Prague on February 14th, 1929. So if anything knows something about the Teddy Sinclair in this photo, please leave a comment. Now, these next photos I don't really have any idea about. I think I recognize some of them, but you know what they say, better to sit by and look stupid rather than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. So please do contribute your IDs. I will number each of them and provide any additional information I have. That way, if you refer to them in the comments, you can refer to them by number and I'll know which one you're talking about. So again, please leave a comment. Well, that's it for this week. Next week, we'll be moving into the 1930s with an entirely new cast of characters. I look forward to you joining me. Also, please like and subscribe. I have some cool ideas for some t-shirts that I'm sure Jazz Lovers will like, but until I know that there will be some interested fans, I can't get that set up. Maybe next week I'll unveil the design, see if there's any interest. Thanks, and I'll see you all next week.